we could say that cells supervene on molecular structures, all the way up till we get to abstract concepts, right?
And that is
Propositions,
not
things
how the
like
word
that.
supervene
And
or
then we would say
supervene
that
is
those
used for.
things would supervene on things that have the spatiotemporal limitations that create the abstract objects.
And you are not using the word supervene or supervenience in the way it's used in contemporary analytic philosophy. You're using it in your own special way. And I get that. And you can use it in your own special way if you want.
Yeah,
but you
my
need
Do
to
you
way
agree
of
with the
using
fact
it.
to be entailed by or consequent of the existence or establishment of another?
I think you're
Just say yes or no. Do
abusing.
you agree?
Repeat it.
Do you agree with a fact to be entailed by or consequent of the existence or establishment of another?
Do I agree that the word supervenes means a fact existence to or tailed upon the consequence of another?
A fact to be entailed by or consequent on the existence of establishment of another?
I think you're in the vicinity of a relatively unphilosophical use of the term supervene.
So
With that
you're
definition.
operating outside of the SCP, so that's uninteresting.
That's like an
No,
it's just that is.
I think you're using
So
the
like
term
he's
in
wanting,
this
sounds like a guessing game. It's
Yeah, I mean, Young's
hotter, cold.
Young's kind of
fucking
what I
say
think
whatever
is
you want.
Yeah, look. So I don't understand why you look. Let's
All
say, let's just say for the sake of argument, she did use it incorrectly. Why don't you ask her what she meant? I'm confused. Like, just ask her for conceptually what she's saying, as opposed to whether or not she used the word in the exact accordance to a dictionary definition.
Well, Sam, what I mean, so that's exactly. So he's looking for like Putnam, right?
Supervene is a technical
I'm
term
sorry.
in philosophy.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, buddy.
He proceeds to do.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, everybody
He's
calm down.
looking-
Also, we're live, so
It means
keep the gamer words to a
consequential
minimum.
Thank you.
upon and
Thank you, Tom.
entailed by.
So he's looking for Putnam, right, which would say something to the effect of like a set of properties A would supervene on another set B, just in case no two things can differ with respect to A. Right?
That's right. So supervenience
so
in
that-
philosophy
that
means
I'm sorry.
Hang on a
sorry,
sec, bud.
almost
Hang
there.
on. Hang on a second. Hang on.
So we could also refer to it with like X and Y. We could talk about like a set of facts, like if X would supervene on Y, if only some difference in Y is necessary for the
facts don't
difference in
change it.
X to be
And that's how the term
right?
is used. in
Hang on a
philosophy.
second. Hey, come on, man, please.
So that's the secondary thing that I just gave is much easier to analogize in these conversations. So again, that's going to be X is said to supervene on Y, if and only if some difference in Y is necessary for any difference in X to be possible. And we can understand that in terms of the example that I gave, where some kind of elementary quantum particle, right? We could say atoms or atomic structures would supervene on that, because in that we could fulfill that X is said to supervene on Y if and only if some difference in Y is necessary for any difference in X to be possible. That is supervenience as understood from the metaphysical aspect of a physicalist.
So congratulations on doing a better job of understanding how the term supervenience is used in academic philosophy.
It doesn't seem you understand.
That said,
yeah, so I understood the term from the beginning. What I did was
let him talk too, though.
Yes.
That said, while it seemed like you understood or attempting to use the term in the way it's used in contemporary academic philosophical discourse, I just didn't get that you actually used it correctly in the end.
She was like reading from the SCP, sorry.
Well, so
like,
yeah, I mean,
do you take it that that's like not a good standard?
I like the SCP. I think the SCP is generally.
She was literally reading from the SCP.
Yeah.
FYI, just saying.
I get that. I think the SCP is generally a very reliable guide.
Okay, so
and I don't think you misused it or abused it in any case. No. I think you misunderstood it.
No, I
think you did it right. think you just
See,
didn't
here's
get it
what
right.
But she just read from it. There's nothing to be interpreted there.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
so
the first.
real-
I mean, you read the
it's the first
definition.
Hang on.
Fine, but you didn't use it properly. You haven't
So if
properly
if I may,
used
just
the
real quick,
term supervenience correctly.
So
if I
the
may,
SCP didn't use it correctly.
No, you didn't. The SCP has it fine. You
She
didn't
was
use it
reading.
correctly.
She was reading from the SCP.
She
Yeah.
read the definition, and I think that was fine and fair. But you haven't used the term properly yet.
okay, so I'm just gonna.
All she
I'm
did
just
was
gonna
read
just-
it.
To me.
I need to jump in
You
here
read
real
the
quick to point out
definition,
something.
but you haven't used the term properly yet.
But
I
she only
really
read the
need to be able to
definition.
respond to this
what are
guy.
you talking
Yeah,
about?
so she read the definition, and the definition is fine, but you haven't used the term properly yet.
Okay.
What does it mean to use the term properly?
Well, you've got to use it in conversation in a way that makes sense and shit. Like
That's what I did.
Right.
I
you didn't.
used it in conversation. In fact, what I did was first off, before giving any technical definition, use it in an analogy which you then rejected and told me I was incorrect. It's you, sir, who do not understand what these words mean, because I explained to you that when a physicalist is talking about supervenience, as in abstract concepts like hypothetical and categorical imperatives, when we would talk about something like societal norms, morals, ethics, things like that, mathematics, logical inferences, those things would be said to supervene on things that have spatiotemporal locations. And I gave you a ladder, right? A very common, like Introduction to Metaphysics 101 ladder, right? You telling me I didn't use it in conversation is just a lie. I don't know what you're doing here.
You haven't made any sense. I'm sorry. I'm not following you. You're not making sense.
Well, I can't help.
All right,
you
let
in
me
that.
just
Everybody
let
in
me
the
let me
room
just
here
catch
understood
everybody up because this is cumbersome to say the least. So this gentleman stands.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm not following. You're not making sense. I have to say, you know what I consider the things that you've said?
Did you hear me speaking?
Yikes. Go ahead, speak.
All right. So
I'll
let me
shut the
just.
fuck up.
Can I just do a quick recap? All right. So this gentleman is saying that every single physicalist, and even though he's reiterated that, I think he's being a little bit hyperbolic, believes that not everything is physical. Correct?
Are you asking me to answer that question?
Yes.
So I think almost every single physicalist believes in the existence of abstract objects if they have any sense. And abstract objects are not physical objects. So almost
right.
every normal. So Willard Van Orman Quine, for example, right? Of course, he believes physicalist. He's a physicalist, but he believes in the existence of sets and propositions, and shit like this. Sets and propositions aren't physical objects. He believes in abstracta.
Okay. And just to be clear, your definition of physicalism is that everything is physical except for the things that are not.
Well, I mean, I want to be charitable to physicalists. I don't want to screw them over. So I think physicalists think lots of things non-physicalists think are non-physical are physical. But physicalists, if they're smart, still believe in the existence of things like numbers, sets, and other sorts of abstracta. Now, hardcore physicalists think nothing exists but the physical. And these people are problem folks. And they don't have much to back their arguments up with. But it's tricky. You know, you want to listen to them, of course. You want to hear their arguments out.
Yeah,
Okay, so it sounds like you think that there's some sort of incoherency in the view that everything is physical, or what you would refer to as a hardcore physicalist view, right?
Yeah, so I think the hardcore physicalists are.
Hold on a second. Is that correct?
I think we should listen to the hardcore physicalists. I think we should hear their position out. For the most part, no competent philosopher, mathematician, whatever, is a hardcore physicalist and thinks everything is physical. Again, as I've said, Willard Van Orman Quine and almost every single nominalist you can find believes in the existence of abstracta, whether it be numbers, sets, propositions, or what have you.
Did you just say nominalists believe in abstract objects?
This is just the single worst.
This is just sad.
You realize nominalism is literally
hold on a
denying
second, guys. It's not gonna just be. It's not gonna go the way you think. If you
would you like me to help you, or do you have things under control, sir?
No, I definitely want help because I don't even know if this is just too much of a burden for one man to actually carry. But I'm just saying that this is not just going to become that. Okay, so if you want to join in, you are all welcome to, but
I'm a nice guy.
You're gonna have to behave, right? You're gonna have to behave.
I can just behave.
That is not true, Pogan.
There's no guys, just like this. There's no threat here, right? And the sky's not falling. You guys just need to take it easy, please. Right?
I don't need anybody to take anything.
So I just want to make.
Let me just wrap up my segment real quick, okay? Stanced. I was asking you a question, right? Because you were saying, huh?
Whatever you want, ask away.
Thank you. So I was trying to get something on the board here so that we can actually have a discussion. I was asking you about your view of physicalism. You seem to think that it was dumb, no competent physicalist. And my question was, are you saying this about a hardcore physicalist because by your lights there is some incoherency in the view of a hardcore physicalist?
So yes, I'd be happy to say that I definitely think a hardcore physicalist, and by hardcore physicalist I mean somebody who thinks the only things that exist are physical things, right? That individual is a bit stupid.
No. My question is, do you think the view of a hardcore physicalist is incoherent? Because that's what I'm guessing that you mean by when you say stupid, right?
I think an individual who thinks the only things that exist in the world are physical things is.
Let's try this another one.
Take deep breaths. Deep breaths.
Look, Brenda.
Definitely wrong.
Wrong.
Okay.
So by wrong, do you mean that their views entail contradictions or things like that?
No, I definitely don't think the position that the only things that exist are physical things.
It's a different question. Different question.
That
right?
Tells a contradiction. That's ridiculous. Nobody would think that.
You don't think. All right. Okay. Gotcha. Right. You don't think.
Can I try?
Okay. Yeah. Go
Thank you. When you say a view is incoherent, it implies that there's a contradiction in the view. That's what it means for philosophical.
Well, he didn't say incoherent. He just said stupid, dumb, and no one thinks it. Right?
We're getting there. We're getting there. So if you don't think the view is incoherent, that is to say, you don't think there's a contradiction imposed by hard physicalism, right?
No, I think if you think that the only things.
Hold on a second. With all due respect, Stanced.
Yeah, sure.
Pogan was still speaking. I'm sorry.
Let him go.
The question's this. If I were to ask you something like, is it true that all predicates reduce to the physical? Right? If I were to ask you that question, presumably you'd say no, because you've said the view is stupid, dumb, whatever it is you said. But then the question is, what reason is there for anybody in this room to accept
if
that
you
the
ask
view
me whether or not all predicates reduce to the physical, I think you're an idiot.
That's okay. Why would I be an idiot if I held that view? Hello?
You asked me if all predicates reduce to the physical?
Yes, bro. Yes.
That's like
yes.
Nonsensical.
Why is it nonsense? That's just repeating yourself.
Does a predicate reduce to the physical? That's interesting. It's a predicate reduced to the physical.
If you don't need to, I don't understand the sarcasm.
Justify your answer.
I'm asking a straightforward.
Dude, take it easy, bro.
Look, I'm not really getting the sarcasm, right? Nobody in this room has any reason to accept prima facie that it's just stupid. We're asking a question like, if you want to say the view is stupid, what reason would we have to agree with you? And you haven't answered that question. Do you have an answer?
That's an interesting question.
Wait.
To ask an interesting question.
So you're refusing to answer the question on the basis that you don't think it's interesting.
You haven't asked the question yet.
Are you kidding? I just asked you what reason we would have to agree with you that it's a dumb view.
What reason we have to agree with you that it's a dumb view?
Agree with you. You're making the claim.
It's not a hard question.
Look, let me just. I have an idea.
Easy.
You're not even barely managing to ask a question. So.
It is your. We'll go Socratic. It is your position that hard physicalism is stupid. Correct?
Hard physicalism. What do you mean by hard physicalism?
What you mean?
Everything. What you mean, right? Everything is reducible to physical antecedent.
No, everything
conditions.
is physical, or reducible.
Sure, that's basically the same thing. But is that view stupid? Yes or no?
So is the view that absolutely everything that exists is a physical entity stupid?
Is that view stupid?
Yes, that's stupid.
Why is it stupid?
Are you asking me why is it stupid that I said that?
Can we let him answer?
Did you hear my question, Stansted? Or whatever your name is? Hello? Okay. Right. All right. Yeah. Okay.
That was ECW.
It's not about W's, man. Come on. Shout out to JHC on YouTube. Yo, what up, JHC?
Sorry, I had to take a break there for a moment.
Did you hear the question?
Whatever the question was, it's irrelevant.
Well, I can assure you the question is not irrelevant. You said, because I asked you this, if the view is stupid, and you said sure is, and then I asked you why is it stupid, to which I'm still waiting for an answer. Right? That's where we are in the conversation here.
So where we are in the conversation here is you have nothing that is anywhere interesting.
Stancy, hold on. I need to ask you a question.
Jesus
do you have any diagnosed mental disabilities?
All right, come on, dude. Look, that's exactly not the type of thing I was talking about. Why are you doing that? Stop it.
It's just a stance that it's like very odd that anyone would say, right, that when it comes to establishing whether or not a view is tenable or not, it's very odd if someone asks justification for whatever position you hold on that view. It's odd to say that that's irrelevant. It seems like insane almost.
I'm fine. Right. It's fine. You can ask whatever you want. It's cool.
Yeah, but
okay, but
Pugan, shut up. But we asked you something, right? That, like, do you agree with what I just said, or let's do it this way? Do you agree with what I just said? Is it relevant to ask you for justification for positions you hold on other views?
You're welcome to ask for justification. I don't mind.
That's what I was doing. That's what I meant when I.
So, are you willing to give it?
What?
No or yes? No. Okay.
You're probably going to be wrong, but if you're
probably going to be wrong about what? I didn't have a position.
You're probably going to be wrong about anything, but
what?
If you're right, I'll let you know.
Just a simple justification of what you've already said.
Look, this has no bearing on any positions that we hold. Your position is hard physicalism, aka the view that all there is the physical, is a stupid view.
Yeah.
Everybody understand. Hold on.
That's
Everybody
dumb.
1 second. Everybody understands that. And then I asked you, why is the view stupid? Which is the same thing as asking for you to justify the view being stupid. And you refused to answer the question. So then my friend here, Young, tried the same thing, and you still refused to answer the question. So are you refusing to answer the question because, one, you don't have a justification for it being stupid, or two, you're just bored with the question and wasting our time? Is it? I'm leaning towards two.
I'm certainly, definitely bored with your.
Okay, goodbye. Then goodbye. Then goodbye. You're just wasting our time then.
I'm happy to engage you in conversation.
You're not.
All right,
You're not happy.
Pogan. He's done,
calm
bud.
down, bud.
All right, tag out.
Hey, Stance.
Wow.
Can I
I
ask?
said I was happy to engage you.
May I ask
Yeah, but
Stance the question?
he's just trolling. Then I mean, it's like this.
I mean, it sounds like you're trolling.
No,
wait,
look,
wait,
when people
just wait a second, Puddin. Because you say that you're happy with engage with us, but right, like
Sure.
when you say that,
Sure.
do you mean just accept the questions where I'm forced to give justification, or what? Because like you don't,
No, look,
when we ask you questions and then you're like, I don't
I'll
care, or this is
I'll
uninteresting, or you're likely to be wrong when nobody gave a position.
Of
That just
course
means
you're
you're not
likely
willing
to
to
be
engage,
wrong.
right?
Of course you're likely to be wrong. You're almost certain to be wrong. You're almost certainly false, right?
But
I mean,
why?
your positions are probably almost stupid and retarded, but whatever.
This is
I'll
boring.
engage. I'll engage.
Oh, come on. I mean, we're supposed to
And-
respect
Can you-
But see, when you
But
say
you see, when you say that you'll engage, that equates to giving a justification. So we'll be waiting. I mean,
I'd like to ask Stance one question, please, just one.
Yeah,
May I ask that? What does the word nominal mean?
My wife is getting pissed.
That's not what the word nominal means.
She's getting pissed. You know what?
Yeah, dude. Happy wife, happy life. Don't make her upset.
Look, he
She's
senses
getting
danger. He doesn't want
I
to
will
answer any
engage
questions.
any day of the week.
Except
just
today.
just not when
She's
you're
getting pissed. So
okay, goodbye.
Here's the thing.
Is
Is she getting pissed or is she getting hardcore pissed? Because like there's a difference.
This now, or let's not.
Can you give a justification for that?
Why do you? I don't understand why you keep shifting this expectation to us. Right? Two people have asked you the same question, which, on one hand, you want to say you're happy to engage, and on the other hand, you want to say that asking you to justify the view that hard physicalism is dumb is somehow boring, even though that's your position.
Happy to engage, and hard physicalism is dumb, and anybody who endorses it is a retard, and that might be you. And I'm sorry if I have to say.
I hate to say this, but
Gotcha. Okay, look, that's fine. That's fine for you to stand. That's fine, right? A lot of people are physicalists, myself included. Call me a retard, say it's a dumb view, right? That's fine. I understand. No offense taken. Let's hold on a second. Right? Now, if you by that mean that there is something incoherent, there's a contradiction entailed in the view, I would very much so want to know about that so I could potentially change my view to something that is coherent.
And I would hope you would want to know that, since I would hope that you would want to know that you're not like endorsing contradictions in terms or being.
Then what's the contradiction?
Not going to answer it.
Are we going to find out someday?
Well, not by this method, we're not, because
You seem considerably more interested in impugning the character of people that hold the position rather than just explaining to them why it's a problematic view. And I'll just pose the same question, since you said you were happy to engage. If you take it that the view is dumb, we don't even have to talk about a contradiction. We'll get to that later. But if you take it that the view is dumb, right, can you explain to us what is dumb about the position of hard physicalism?
Yes, I can explain to you what is dumb about
what is that explanation?
Go right ahead.
There is not a single.
Just start with one thing.
Competent philosopher.
That's not a good reason.
Graham Opie.
This is already wrong.
Let him finish. Just let him finish.
Right.
Jesus fucking Christ. This is crazy.
What?
We're actually asking you
JJ,
to
I
go
will
back
mute
up.
you if you do your
Let
shtick.
him rant and get.
Oh, I want to get in.
I'm going to mute anybody who just does this shtick. Stop it, please.
Yeah, all you, Stanston. Why is the view dumb?
Well, he did provide a reason.
Hold on, just let him.
Why did he say
look,
something about
it's
no
his turn to
competent
talk.
philosopher?
He's obviously stepped away from the computer. I think it's like
No.
self-evident.
I mean, we can list philosophers that commit to hard physicalism, but the problem there is he's probably just going to take it that they're not competent in virtue of having the view, which is not interesting.
Right, but it's kind of self-evident at this point. He's not got a justification for it. It just seems a bit strange that he's going to keep hammering it home as if he's going to admit that, because it's just going around in circles for the last 5 minutes. But you're just saying that's not an answer, and he's saying, well, okay, and then he's doing his thing, and it's going back and forth. And it's just like it's just not going anywhere.
He realizes
Is that
out
all
of
he's
his-
going to offer?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably yes. That's probably the likely answer. That he's not going to be able to answer it.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
it's been a half
realizes
hour.
It's the end of it. There's no reason to like go, oh well, let's go. He's gone. So
Yeah, he realizes that he's out of his depth. He hasn't been challenged before, and now he found a place where his bullshit doesn't fly.
Well, not even that.
Yeah.
It's just there should be one single justification why you hold an opinion, any opinion ever.
Yeah, Brenda,
Right?
we're a
And
bunch of
just-
hardcore fucking
We are the
warriors.
terror. We are the terror of the internets.
I mean, you could say, I think this idea is stupid because I read its opposite in a book and I believe that. That would be a justification, right? Anything is a justification, except that when just asked a simple, direct question, this person just broadly appeals and just can't give one justification, is now burned a half hour. So it's just
He could
it's
take
fruitless.
he could take the Tom Jump move and appeal to Phil Surveys.
well, it's most likely that obviously his position is based off on the view that there's physicalism, is there's physical objects and there's abstracta, and he's obviously heard some good arguments because he mentioned Quine, who's like a very heavy on that position. So presumably he's based his position off that because the arguments that he's read of that is convincing to him. I think what he's probably having problems with is the conceptual. When someone asks him the question, why can't you not just have everything as physical? There's probably just like he doesn't understand the question as to how to explain why that isn't true, because it's like it's just it doesn't have a clear definition of his head as what he's supposed to be criticizing. Because there was a mention about the predicates, about how they, like, some people said, oh, okay, they do that. Why is it stupid that predicates reduce down? Why is it stupid that predicates reduce down to just physical objects or the physical? And it just seems like either he's never really approached it from that angle ever, which means he just doesn't have an answer, and he just doesn't know how to admit to it, because obviously everyone's piling in on him all at once for an answer. So that's the most charitable interpretation I can give it without just being silly.
Stanst.
Welcome back.
Is he back?
He was on his mic a bit.
It's rummaging.
Feedback. Stance, are you there?
Yeah, there, Stanstead.
He's made a lot of claims that I don't think are true so far. He said that physicalism, as it is contemporarily understood, is the idea that everything is physical except for the things that aren't. He said that almost every single philosopher thinks that physicalism is dumb, and that view of physicalism being that everything is physical or supervenes on the physical. We read from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. He said that he accepts that source as being authoritative, but what was read from it he has an issue with. And when he repeatedly said that what he calls hardcore physicalism, which is what we just call physicalism, when he said that that's dumb and stupid and anyone believes that is a retard. When we asked why, there was no answer. When we asked if the view entails some kind of contradiction, there was no answer. Is that a good summary?
What did he reject from the SCP?
Well,
I don't think he rejected it. I think he
didn't
was just
reject
saying
it.
that.
He just
I think.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think he's just saying that he was expecting Kathleen to like use it in some sort of example to demonstrate understanding of the definition, but there wasn't. We didn't get to that point. It was like
He was he was basically testing, like
yeah,
the product for quality or something. It was like really odd.
Well, Danny isn't actually a nice person. Maybe he can reason with him.
Did you say he isn't a nice?
I kind of
Yes,
like
you
Young's.
do bite, but only when asked.
Like Young's
demanded, in
the
fact.
definition that Young posted was the one that I kind of was more in tune with because
For
that
physicalism, or did he? What did
No,
he mean?
it was
Naturalism?
it was for supervenience.
It was purely for
what
the
he
definition of supervenience.
basically said about physicalism, right? At one point, he said very like pretty clearly that what he thinks physicalists are, right, are people who think that at least most things, like he views it that most physicalists, or at least smart physicalists, are the ones that think that most things are physical, but they still sort of are intelligent enough, quote unquote, to maintain that things like abstract objects aren't physical, right? That abstract objects exist, so like propositions, numbers, and so on. He just takes it that there's another class that are the retards, which believe that those things do not exist, or at least exist, or that they exist and are somehow physical.
Yeah,
but then, which I mean, I don't have a position on that, but when sort of asked why that distinct class is retarded, he doesn't really seem to have an answer for it, for why it's retarded.
I think what he might have been getting at was the fact that when people say, because like his obviously position is that he believes abstract objects exist but are not physical. I think when people say, oh, but everything's physical, I think they're kind of trying to deny that abstract objects exist, like simpliciter, which is like, because this all derived from the conversation with Kat saying that why should I believe that numbers exist? And because this was where it came from, he was just like, well, yeah, obviously numbers exist. What's the number between 7 and 9? So I think it might have been the fact that
he said
thinks
that. He said this. What's the number? He asked, "What's between 7 and 9?"
Yeah, because he was trying to try and give us some kind of definition of what existence was to Kat, who was trying to kind of say, well, why should I believe that natural or why should I believe that numbers exist necessarily? And he was like trying to give the example. Well, of course, numbers exist because what's the number between 7 and 9? A natural number, and obviously the answer is 8.
But you might think it's like equivocal. Like we would say that Harry Potter, has a scar, but when we make that predication of that object, we're not talking about some kind of robust existence of.
Yeah, I think that's like if you're talking about like what's real and what's not real, but I think he's just talking in terms of literally the set of all things in the universe, I guess, because its existence isn't easy to define without like appealing to existence,
right? Yeah.
Which is kind of like it's almost like a self-evident thing, but this is where it stemmed from, and I think the bit he's getting frustrated on is because he thinks that when people say, "Oh, everything that exists is physical," it's kind of like saying, rather than saying abstract objects can be explained in terms of the physical, they're saying there's only physical objects and abstract objects just don't exist. Which obviously most people would say is that's silly because obviously some concept of abstract objects must exist.
Yeah, there are people that think they can naturalize abstract objects. I don't know a lot about that, but they're out there contemporarily speaking.
Yeah, I don't think it's sensible to really have an opinion on abstract objects like that. I mean, you can say, well, it's likely the case that if physicalism, obviously the case if physicalism is true, that some aspect of abstract objects are kind of going to be physical, but you don't have to commit to it to say I am a physicalist. You can just say, well, I'm just going to be agnostic on it and say abstract objects are just the name place we're going to give to them until we figure out what the fuck
Oh,
That's
I
the
guess
problem.
I'm not. I see. Wait. So you're saying something like if someone says, "Look, I'm a physicalist, but I don't know how to understand abstract objects yet," right? Is that what you?
Yeah, I mean, if
basically
you if
okay.
yeah, if someone's trying to like back you into kind of like say, well, what is the physical explanation for abstract objects? You might just say, well, it's just we're just going to accept that they exist, but I don't claim to have an answer for what they are as such. It might be the case that you could reduce them into some sort of physical explanation, but it might be that it's just not possible. It's just like abstract objects are just something unto themselves or something like that. Or it might be that we can't ever understand abstract objects except for as we do now. It's just like declare them as these things in the ether, as it were. But yeah, I think that's what I was getting to him, because he just thought that you just meant if you were saying the quote unquote hardcore physicalist, you were just denying the existence of abstract objects implicita, which I don't think any hardcore physicalist would do. Or maybe there's some crazy ones, but there's always some crazy ones out there.
Well, there are. What do you make of nominalism? I mean, isn't nominalism a pretty serious view?
I don't know enough about nominalism as a general topic to say. Maybe there are. So maybe
Well,
I'm
no, there are a lot, right? I mean, that nominalism is a seriously taken, like it's seriously considered in the literature. Absolutely seriously considered.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm just not sure if I'm doing credit to the word, because I'm not really fully read up on it. So is nominalism just that there are? I don't know. You have to tell me. You probably know about it. What would you say? What's the kind of general definition of
It's just
nominalism?
rejecting all of those kind of any abstracta, right?
Okay.
That existed. But like, I think that they appeal to stuff like free logic as a way of like, look, we can still talk about these things, but just because we're talking about these things, there's this sense in which we're not ontologically committed to them or something like that. But I don't understand it. But I think it's something like that.
Yeah, I'm just reading it now.
I think it. I could be wrong, but I thought it was 10 to 20%. Like 30 to 40% of philosophers are Platonists, and I think like 10 to 20% are nominalists. But I have to check that. And then there are a lot of people that just don't take a position.
Yeah, I just think it's sensible to not take a position, because it's just. I mean, you might have like a cool argument, but I don't have one, so I'm just like, I can't see why you'd be crazy enough to jump off the fence on that, because it doesn't, like, just believing that they're just agnostic on it or whatever just doesn't commit you to like rejecting physicalism. It's just like just means that at the moment I don't have an answer for you, you know. And like in my position is I don't think anyone has. No one's told me.
Oh, I was really off. 40% Platonist. So I was right about that. 37.7% nominalists. That's that's a huge portion. Other 23%. So nominalism and Platonism are almost at are equal. There's like an equal tug of war here with respect. But this is 2009.
Yeah.
I can't wait till they're supposed to do it in September. A new Phil papers, and I'm just like they were supposed to do it in December, but they postponed it because of COVID. These need to be updated. It's been over a decade.
But those categories can be subdivided quite a bit, though.
Where's the other 20-odd% fall?
Probably something like I don't know, or I don't really think about it. I don't know. There are conceptualists, right? So they're going to think that they're objects of the mind, or or something like that. Of course, you have like people like divine conceptualists, which are going to be a minority. And then like what are the other views? I mean, you have like people like Mill's view, where like they're things that are perceived in the physical world, or at least empirically. I'm not so sure if that's exactly Mill's method. I don't whether he was just saying that, yeah, Quine thinks that you can know these empirically. That's the way you came to know these. But he was a Platonist. But I think Mill was a little bit more committed to thinking that like the abstract objects, or these objects rather, existed empirically in some kind of way. So when you saw like three rocks, you were also acquainted with like the object of three in that perception or something. I don't know.
A conceptualist could be just a way of punting on the question. You can say, I think that numbers are just ideas, they're concepts in the mind, and I'm not going to worry about mind-brain issues, whether mental states are brain states or not. I'm just going to punt on that.
Well, I think there's a
You know
big
what I mean?
problem too, right? Like, for instance, we have to make sense of infinities, and presumably we have a finite number of beliefs. And then also, like the set of natural numbers go on infinitely, right? Do I have an infinite number of beliefs, right? And probably not.
I could just be a constructivist. I could just be a constructivist then.
Well, I don't know too much about that, but the secondary issue for me with respect to psychologism or conceptualism is that math becomes a psychological endeavor. It becomes psychology, the study of a psychology. All right.
Constructivists don't deal with infinities. They have a really odd way of doing calculus, for instance.
What about sets? I don't know anything about constructivism. So, do they think the natural numbers go on? Well,
yeah, but you just never can. You just imagine it. But you can't actually count that high. But it's just you're shuffling symbols around in your head.
It's it's to do with limits. There's different ways of interpreting infinity, but like to do with like calculus, it's mostly to do with limits. So it's not really you kind of, how do I explain it? Essentially, you can talk about like you can count on and on forever, but there's going to be a point where there's going to be a boundary where the counting can't go past that point, and then you can just count everything after that as being the limit of that infinite set. So you don't have to, by its own definition, you don't have to know every number within the set to solve certain mathematical problems. You just need to know where it's not possible for it to go any further. Like, for example, with the Zeno's paradox, where you've got like, I don't know if you know about the tortoise and the hare thing, where like the tortoise goes half of whatever the rabbit's going, and it's
I'm familiar with
the arrow.
Yeah.
The arrow.
Yeah, it's solved by calculus because obviously there's going to be a point where if you approach the problem not from the ever decreasing amount of distance, but rather the point where it doesn't, even if it went on forever and ever and ever, it would never ever get past this point. You can say, right, that point at that part in the space is the limit, and you can calculate that using calculus to essentially say it doesn't matter how small you get, you just know it's going to stop even after an infinite number of items at that point, and that's the boundary layer. So everything after that is kind of like how you split it in two, like you would any like number. Like if you split an apple in half,
just with infinite, you just do it with infinite series. You're just summing an infinite series of 1/2 plus 1/4, and summing of infinite series is rather trivial in math. So you just take the sum, and the sum is equals 1.
If it's a convergent or divergent series, you can sum convergent series, but not divergent ones.
Not divergent, because divergent's all over the place with crazy. There's no predictability to it in some cases. So. Yeah, there's certain ways you can represent it. Other times, it's like Sam said, it's going to be either mathematically impossible or extremely pragmatically impossible.
Yeah, and for numbers, all you really need is just a couple rules, and you can recreate all the numbers. You just need like an empty set and a few rules, and off you go. You can make up all the numbers just from the empty set.
Well, until you run into Gödel's incompleteness problem, then you're fucked.
Well,
but yeah, that's kind of going off topic a bit.
Why can't there be an infinite path?
Because that would mean you're right, JJ, and no one wants to admit that.
Amen, brother. Amen.
There are different ways to model the continuum as well. So there's a guy on YouTube who he's like a math professor, and he does it with something he calls dual complex numbers, which is like basically like using linear algebra matrices and formulating a sort of like epsilon to kind of like give like really small numbers, and you can have a more robust definition of like extremely small numbers with that sort of method.
I've always liked the method by which you can use unreal numbers to calculate weird things, like when you've got like the negative square root of 2 or something. You can just give it it's You can just literally give it an arbitrary symbol and say, right, that's what the answer is, and then all I have to do is just square the answer to give me like the actual answer.
Yeah. People at first really didn't like negative numbers. I mean, negative whole numbers, like a -1. They rejected that. It was brought into being because accounting principles, accounting people just would call it a debit and a credit. And then after a while, people gave it the label of negative and positive. And mathematicians adopted that. But there were people who really objected to negative numbers because they thought only whole numbers existed. And negative numbers were just this fantasy, this bizarre fantasy that was made up. No, they really thought that was several hundred years ago, but they did.
Yeah, there's worse things. I can't remember the name. I don't think it was Pythagoras, but there was a Greek mathematician who got exiled because he dared to believe in a 13-dimensional polygon. And like I think it was the Pythagoreans who exiled him because they refused to believe.
Yeah, they were absolutely crazy. The Pythagoreans, that was a cult, not even a religion. It was a cult.
Yeah, one of them suggested that there was a square root of 1, but it was irrational, and they went and drowned him.
When they found the square root of 2, and they determined that it was provably irrational.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, square root of 2. You're right. They drowned him. I love it.
Yeah, and then
they had lots of other things like no one should go for
after
bread.
After beans was another thing. They're into beans. They're weird people.
That's what happens when you're Greek and you're snorting too much fucking whatever it is they did back then, and too much into.
They were snorting too many mysteries.
It's like God knows what, 400 BC or something, 500 BC.
And then
all this could have been solved with panpsychism, I'm sure.
And then there came the square roots of -1, imaginary numbers, complex numbers, and that was a big deal too. That came about due to our investigations into electricity and magnetism, and the physics of that time suggested equations and numbers, quaternions, I think, that eventually became complex numbers. And then that's another one that people probably still to this day, I bet there are people that wouldn't accept those as numbers.
Oh, I love the concept of imaginary numbers. It's such a clever way of solving the problem. It's just like you just invent like an arbitrary imaginary symbol for it, and then you just do things to the symbol rather than number.
Well, that's what mathematicians do. They just invent stuff, and then they see what happens. They invent rules, and then they see, well, what happens if I say this rule applies to this mathematical thing, and let's see what happens.
The most recent controversy that I know of in writing was it's around about the 1970s to do with chaos theory, and it was quite amusing reading up on it because it was like essentially every physicist at the time, let's say just the majority of them, were in the position of like linear mechanics was just like everything. It's like if you had you were calculating like the speed of a wheel on a surface, you just could do things like assume friction didn't exist and things like that because it made the math simpler. And it was like if you're calculating a pendulum, it's simple because you're just going back and forth at a given rate of acceleration. But as soon as you try and do complex like 3-body problems or anything that involves like friction, where there's all these coefficients, it just like the whole mathematics just falls apart. It becomes like exponentially more complicated. You just without computers, you just fucked because it just becomes so complicated. And then there's essentially a bunch of mathematicians that came along that were dealing with topology, and they were just like, look, all you have to do is forget about trying to calculate it accurately to within the nth degree. You just got to represent it differently. You just got to represent it in terms of either a topology or like a form of a tractor, which a tractor was basically not trying to calculate the individual position of the atom as it moves around, but just the average position of where it would be at any one given time. And then you just it just solved the problem because you're rather than trying to do like trillions of calculations all at once, you're just mapping like the average of where it is at any one point, and that's just a linear function. And then whilst it's not super accurate, it means that you can just throw out all this complicated mathematics and just get the answer that you need pragmatically. So they're just like they would literally like laugh in the face of these people as they're trying to say, look, this is the answer. We've solved it in mathematics. Just this is what you do. And it took like a decade for them to take it seriously. And now it's like almost given as like just a given that you can do this with mathematics.
Yeah. If you take a double pendulum where you have like one stiff segment and it's connected with by hinge to another segment, and you hold it up and you let it fall, and that thing